Hello, I'm Ryan Knowles. Today I'm going to give a demonstration on how to brew beer. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to brew your first batch of beer. Before we get started, just want to say I'm 25 years old. I am over 21. It's legal. Everyone always asks me if brewing beer is legal. It has been legal since 1979 when Jimmy Carter made it legal. So first I'll go over the ingredients. Beer has 3 major ingredients in addition to water. The first one, which gives the beer its alcohol and a lot of its flavor, is barley. Just grown. This is malted barley, which means that it's been germinated, and then the sugar or starches in it, and then goes through a process to convert the starches to sugar. Today, instead of using this, which is what you would use for all grain brewing, we're going to be using malt extract, which is better for beginner brewers. It's just they've already taken the sugars out of the grain, so we have it in this little thing. We will be using a small bit of barley to give the beer a typical flavor, to adjust for the style of the beer so that all beer isn't the same. The second ingredient is hops. Our hops, they come in these little packages in 1 ounces. We'll be using 3.5 ounces of hops today, added at 3 different times. And when you add the hops at different times, it affects the bitterness, the flavor, the aroma, all those things. We'll talk more about that later. The third ingredient, which is very important, is yeast. We're going to use dry yeast today. This is very, very cheap. The cheapest ingredient, this costs about $1. You can also get liquid yeast, which is usually more for a different style of beer, more specific. It's more expensive. It costs $5 or $6 usually. But dry yeast, some people think is better. Some people think liquid yeast is better, but it doesn't matter. You can get the malt extract in a liquid form, or you can get it in a dry powdered form like this. And either one you can use. It doesn't really make any difference if you're going to do that. What we're doing right now is I'm boiling or heating up 3 gallons of water. When you're brewing extract beer, your boil volume doesn't matter. You can have 3 gallons, 2 gallons, 1 gallon, but you want to try to boil or heat up as much water as the biggest pot you have. I have a 5.5 gallon pot. We're just doing 3 gallons today. When it gets to about 155 degrees, we will add the specialty grains inside of a mesh pouch like this. If you don't have a thermometer, and the cheap turkey thermometers don't work very well because they're not very accurate, don't really worry about it. Just make sure you do not boil these grains because it will give some harsh flavors to your beer. After we we'll let that sit at around 150, in between 150 and 170 degrees for about 25 minutes. After that, we'll add 1 of these, which is 3.15 pounds of malt extract. We'll add 1 of these, and we'll let that go until it boils. After it starts boiling, we'll add our first addition of hops. Later, when there's about 15 minutes left, we'll add the second jug of malt extract. Adding the malt at different stages will affect how the color of your beer. It'll make it lighter if you spread them out. It'll also make the beer much lighter in body, and it'll bring the flavor of the hops out. After we get done with that, we'll cool it. You can cool it several ways. You can put it in a big ice bath and let it sit, and that'll take about an hour or so. Or the best way, you can use this. This is a copper wort chiller. And what that does is it hooks up to the garden hose, and then one end goes in, runs through, and comes out, and it cools the beer. And this will cool a 3-gallon batch in about 15 minutes. You want to cool it under 100 degrees before you add your yeast, because then if it's more, it'll kill the yeast, which isn't good. Then after we cool it, we will add our yeast. Then we'll put them in a bucket like this, And this is, when it's in here, it will undergo what's called primary fermentation. That's when the yeast are eating the sugar from the barley and they're converting it to alcohol and CO2. It's very important, when you figure out what you're doing, you can use a glass jug, but at first it's a little risky because if it builds up too much pressure, it can shatter the glass jug, which is why the plastic things are good, because they can just pop the top off and it won't really matter. There's a little hole on top of this, which we will put an airlock into, and it just helps keep the air from getting in, because you don't want bacteria, all those things getting in, affecting your beer. After you get done with that, usually it'll stay in primary fermentation for about a week in this jug. If it can take longer. And after that, most of the sugars have been eaten by the yeast, and you have beer. This is called a siphon pump, and you just put it in it, and you do that, and it siphons the beer out. Then you can siphon it into this glass jar, or a glass jar like this, and this is where what is called secondary fermentation, and it'll stay in there usually for about 2 weeks. And during that time, the beer will clear, all the yeast will settle out of it, everything else that you don't want will settle out of it, and then you can put it in a bucket and bottle it, or bottle it right out of here, and then it'll be in the bottle. When you bottle it, to get carbonation, you have to add priming sugar, which is corn sugar. You want to add about 4.5 ounces of priming sugar per 5-gallon batches of beer, which is what we're making, 5 gallons of beer. And you'll boil that in water and just add it to it right before you bottle. And then after you cap it, the yeast will eat the sugar and give off CO2, and that's what causes carbonation. Usually after you bottle it, it'll take 2 weeks to carbonate. But you should let your beer age 5 or 6 weeks till it's really good. A heavier beer with a higher alcohol percentage, like a 9% or 10% beer, you might need longer, 6 months to a year before it's properly aged and ready to drink. Bottling is really easy. That's another question I get a lot of. This is a beer bottle, and you just buy these little caps. I'll show you real quick how that works. You have a capper like this. And then you just put the cap on top, and this is of course after you fill the beer up, and you put it down, and then it's ready to go. That's all there is to it. And then, like I said, it'll take a couple weeks for it to be carbonated, and then a couple more weeks to age, and then you're good to go. Usually beer, after it's been brewed, will be good for several months afterwards. There's several different options you can use to bottle it. You have these 22-ounce bottles, which are nice because you don't have to cap so many on bottling day. They also have these 32-ounce, and they have the swig top on them, which is nice. And then what's really nice for barbecues and tailgating and all that, I have this 3-gallon, it's a soda keg, and then I have a little pressure thing on it, and then you can just dispense of it right out there like a keg. The friends are always impressed when you have these. Let's see. All right. One batch of beer makes about 5 gallons of extract beer. That will produce about 48 bottles around there, about 12-ounce bottles, or about half as many of the 22-ounce bottles, and it works out pretty well. You can buy your ingredients, your supplies, all of those things. The place I buy most of my stuff is www.midwestsupplies.com. northernbrewer.com has a lot of stuff too. Cool Stuff in Columbia, Missouri has a limited, but has some stuff too. There's a really good store I've never been to, but I've heard about it in Springfield, Missouri, that has everything. Let's see. Okay. So now I'll check the temperature of our water and see where we're at. I think we're too hot. Okay, I heated it up too much, so we'll turn the propane off and let it cool down. It's important to make sure you use stainless steel pots when you're brewing. Aluminum will impart flavors on your beer from the aluminum. You can use acrylic, but if it scratches, the inside of it can impart, or it can bacteria can harbor in there and it can cause infection in your beer, which you don't want. Okay, while that's cooling off, we'll take our, these are our specialty grains. The style of beer we're brewing today is called, the style is called ESB, which stands for Extra Special Bitter. It's an English style of beer. It's very comparable to, if you want to try a commercial version of it, Red Hook. ESB, you can buy at any grocery store or liquor store with a good beer selection. It's one of my favorite types of beer to buy. And it's characteristic because it's extra special bitter, has a very, very strong hops flavor, but then it also has a very generous amount of malt, which is the hops provide a bitter flavor where the malt will provide a sweeter flavor, and then it just kind of, it balances really well, and it has kind of a dark malty flavor to it, which I like. Not dark, but full malty flavor to it. So this is done. You just pour it in this little mesh bag. Okay, then you tie it off. Okay, and we just drop it in, maybe seep it a little bit, make like some beer tea kind of like, and then it just gets all the sugars and the starch mixed in with the water that the water will convert into, the starches will be converted into sugar, which is fermentable for the yeast to eat. Then you just let it sit for about 25 minutes. Okay, so I do put labels on my beer, on a few of them, like the ones that require extra aging. I also make wine that I put labels on as well. This one I actually just bottled yesterday. It's a golden strong ale, and I put a little guy with a bicep on it, and the reason, this is a beer that's very light, like golden in color. When it's in your glass, you think you're drinking like a Bud Light with only 3.5% alcohol, but this will have 9% alcohol in it. Like I said earlier, stronger beers require extra aging time, and so that's why I put it in this one, so I can kind of set to the side for 6 months to a year and then enjoy later. The other one I have, in the bigger one, I called it a Viking braggot. The reason why I call it Viking was in this type of beer specifically came from that area of the world. And what a braggot is it's actually more of a type of wine. It uses honey. It's like with barley and stuff like you normally make a beer, but instead of like a little bit of honey, like with a honey beer, it is mostly honey. So it's very, very strong. This one's 9.3% alcohol. It's actually more similar to a wine than a beer, but it has beer qualities because you've got malt and hops and everything to it as well. But it's very strong. This one I won't touch for a year, and I just bottled this one 2 weeks ago. So this one I got to set and let wait. I'll show you this one that I have in this, and it's just like a normal keg. This is a little gun with CO2 cartridges in it to keep it pressurized to dispense, so you don't have to pump it like you do at weddings. It just dispenses. And as you can see, it's a very golden, light in color type of beer. This is what's called an extra pale ale. If you might have tried like a pale ale, like Boulevard makes a pale ale. Shafley's from St. Louis makes a pale ale. It's pretty good. Usually pale ales are a little bit darker than this. This is an extra pale ale, which means it's lighter in body, but has a more pronounced hops flavor to it. So it's this one was actually an all-grain beer, so I didn't use the malt. One disadvantage of the malt extract is that it makes the beer a little darker in color compared to the standard, because you're not just taking it, because it causes when you make the malt extract, it results in caramelization in the beer. So it's hard to get a lighter colored beer like this one when you do malt extract. That's pretty good. It has a very pronounced malt flavor to it. Just checking the temperature to make sure that it hasn't fallen too much. We're about 165 degrees, so we're still at the upper end of where I'd like to be. Remember, you should be between 155 and 150 and 170 is kind of where you want to be. Any more than 175 or 180, the husk from the grain will start to impart flavors on it that you don't really want. So we'll just leave that alone for a few more minutes. All right, now our grains have been soaking for about 25 minutes, so they're ready to come out. And then we'll take them out, and then we'll boil for about, we'll add turn the propane burner back on, and we'll add our malt, and then we'll boil for about an hour. Make sure you get all the liquid out of there. And it's really important when you're adding the malt extract to stir like crazy when you're adding it, because it can settle in the bottom and burn. And even it's better, I don't usually do it, but to turn your propane burner off while it's going. But and it's also, sometimes it's good, you can just put a little bit of the liquid inside of it, and it just melts, because the stuff is very thick. And at this point, unfermented beer is called wort or wort, and so sometimes if you hear me say that, wort, then that's what it's called. Okay. We've added in the first round of malt extract. We'll let that sit until it gets boiling. As soon as you see it start to boil, or even a little boiling bubble, you can go ahead and add your first round of hops, which we'll do after it gets done boiling. Okay. One of the things that I enjoy most about brewing my own beer, you're free to experiment with the different styles of beer. Most people think that beer is Bud Light, and there's a lot of different variations, a lot of different types of beer. And you also have freedom to kind of do your own thing and try something that just seemed interesting to you. For example, this one that I'm going to show you, I brewed a couple months ago. This is a Mountain Dew beer. I used with Mountain Dew, as well as the malt and the hops and everything. Just kind of a concoction I read about on the internet. Thought I'd give it a try, and it turned out surprisingly well. Most of the sugar that's in the Mountain Dew would have been fermented out, as well as some of the flavor, because the yeast eat all that. So what you're left with is a little bit of a citrusy flavor from the Mountain Dew, as well as the caffeine, and then it pretty much tastes like beer. A lot of people say it compares a lot to like a wheat beer, kind of like a Boulevard, because most wheat beers have a citrusy flavor to them, especially if you add the lemon. So then it becomes very similar to it. For this one, like I said, you can taste the citrus. It doesn't have a very strong hops flavor at all, which was on purpose, because I wanted it to be like a lighter beer. You know, it's easy to drink, easy to sip on, like Mountain Dew. It's pretty full in body. It has, I tried to carbonate it a lot, so it would taste kind of like a soda pop as you were drinking it. And you can also control the carbonation levels with the amount of priming sugar you add. But it's pretty good. As you can see, the color turned out very nice. If the dew would settle on there, you can see it's pretty clear. Clarity is something that can be difficult to gain with extract brewing, but there's some things you can do to help with that as well. The next one I'll show This one, as you can see, when you brew beer, you can reuse bottles. This is an Oktoberfest. This isn't my Oktoberfest, it's Sam Adams, but I reused the bottle. The type of beer that I have in this is it's called a Scottish 80. And with Scottish beers, which are typically ales, they have a number that usually goes with them. And the number will corresponds with the color and the body of the beer. The lower the number is, the lighter the beer. That comes from a long time ago. They had a tax on the beer, and so like the heavier the beer was, the higher the tax would be, so it would actually be more expensive. So Scottish 60 would be very light because it would have been cheaper, so the 60 means like 60 shillings. Where Scottish 80 would be darker, Scottish 90 would be darker and heavier, and then, but that's the highest I've ever seen is a Scottish 90. After you get above that, there's a different classification to it. But as you can see with the Scottish 80, it's a much darker beer. The clarity of this one, I don't know if you'll be able to see because it's darker, is pretty good. Scottish beer typically will, as opposed to English beer, Scottish beer is more malty based, has a very rich, full malty flavor to it, which is sweeter, whereas English beer typically focuses more on the hops, has a very strong hops profiles. Those are your pale ale, your barley wines, your bitters, your extra special bitter like we're doing today. But that's pretty good. Okay, now we have our wort is boiling, and it's time for the first round of hops additions. The recipe for this is we are doing adding 1.5 ounces of Willamette hops, and there's tons of different types of hops that you can add that will add different characters, different types of flavor, bitterness, aroma to your beer. The types we're doing, the first round will be Willamette. The second round are Kent Goldings, which is they're both British style of hops because it's a British type of beer, or English type of beer that it promotes those things. So when you add hops at the beginning of your boil that you let boil for an hour, that will add bitterness to your beer. Most of the flavor and most of the aroma will be boiled off during that hour, but you'll still have the bitterness. So what we do is we add a little bit of beer about 30 minutes into the boil. That'll save a little bit more flavor of the beer, but most of that aroma will be boiled off. But then we'll add hops with only 2 minutes left, and then it will save the aroma from the hops. So that's the advantage of adding hops at different stages in the boiling process. That way we'll still have the smell of the hops at the end, some more flavor if you add in the middle, and the bitterness if you add at the beginning. So we'll go ahead and cut it. And the types of hops I'm using here is pellet hops. Hops grow on a vine, and they make kind of like a little flower, but it doesn't have color. They're green. It's kind of like looks like kind of like a pine cone, but it's like a green leafy thing. And you can use a boiling bag to put this on, or I just dump them in because all of the hops will settle down at the end anyway, so it doesn't really matter, and then it won't hurt anything if it's left in it because it's already boiled out. So you just dump them right in, and that's 1 ounce I've added. And then I'll add the other ounce. Just 1/2. So it's a 1 ounce bag, so I'll just add 1/2 of that. Give them a good stir. Okay, yeah, so these are the hops, Willamette hops, and they looks kind of like rabbit food, I suppose, but if you, the hops normally is a cone about that big, but these are chopped up to get more consistent flavor from one batch to another. And different types of hops, some will be a little bigger in the pellets, some will be a little bit different, but they smell great. I love smelling them. They say if you put them under your pillow at night, it'll help you sleep, but I've never tried that. I'm growing some of these in my backyard. They're just about that tall right now, so maybe the next time they'll be a little bit more to show. But I'm hoping to have fresh hops to add to my beer. I wanted to actually grow barley, which is a grain, and to make 100% homemade beer, but it didn't get done this year, so maybe next year. Okay, and it's important to let your beer boil for the malt requires what's called a hot break. You should make sure your beer boils for a minimum of 30 minutes at a really good kind of rolling boil, because what happens is the malt will break down over that course of boiling and produces a more fermentable sugar for the yeast to eat later. If you just poured the malt in loose and didn't boil it, the yeast wouldn't be able to eat it. That's why we boil beer when we brew it, whereas wine, you wouldn't boil your fruit, because the sugar and the fruit and all those things the yeast can already eat. So that's why it's important to boil your beer before you brew it. The beer, it costs to make one 5-gallon batch of beer, depending on the style. To make extract beer might cost $25 or $30. There's some styles that have more malts, they're a heavier, darker beer, or they're a high alcohol beer, or use a more expensive style of hops that might cost more, as much as $40 or $50. But it just kind of depends on what you want. If you go to the websites that I told you earlier, they have kits you can buy that will come with already, have everything you need, have your hops, your grains, specialty grains, which I added, they'll send you the yeast with it, have everything you need to get started. Then if you want to, you can kind of, after you figure out how to do it with those introductory kits, you can kind of make it your own as you go along. But it's just kind of a really good way to get you started. The kit I bought that we're doing today is from northernbrewer.com. I changed the recipe a little bit. I cut back the hops just a tad, because they added a whole bunch, and I didn't want quite that much hop flavor in my beer. So I just added they wanted to add 2 ounces of Willamette, and I added 1.5 ounces. But it's up to you to brew, and then you can kind of figure out what you like and what you want out of your beer, and then make it your own. That's part of the fun in doing it, it's making it your own. I brought my lovely assistant Ricky here with me. He is my official taste tester. He's probably drank more of my beer than I have. I brought some Mountain Dew beer that Ricky wanted to try, because he's never tried this one. So it's always good to have other people to sample your beer that are non-biased, just so that they can tell you how much they like it to make you feel better.
I expect it to be a little green, but it's not.
Mountain Dew's more yellow than green. It's green, and the bottles are green, but the drink is yellow.
It's really good.
It's good?
I thought you were getting a little too cute at first, making
it's good though,
beer,
isn't
but it's really good,
yeah.
Surprisingly.
And that's what everyone says. I think, yeah, we can go ahead. It's time to add the next round. This has been boiling for about a half an hour, so we can go ahead and add the next round of hops. And for the hops we're adding now, after 30 minutes in the boil, there's 30 minutes left. We boil for an hour. We are going to add the UK Kent Goldings, which is a British style hops. And this will add a lot of flavor to our beer, a little bit of bitterness. And like I said earlier, you just dump it in. It's also always good when you're cooking your beer, brewing it as it's boiling, to keep the lid off of the beer. There is certain chemicals and things that boil off that you don't want in your beer, certain types of acid. That way later it will, if you leave the lid on, it'll all collect to the top and drop right back down into it. You might have to put the lid on a couple times to keep it to a boil if your cooker's like mine and doesn't keep it boiling very well. I just added 1 ounce of the UK Kent Goldings. We have one more round of hops. We'll add it with about 2 minutes left in the boil. It's more Goldings hops. So we'll be back here in about 15 minutes to show you what we're doing next, the next step. It's been boiling another 15 minutes, so it's time. We got to do 2 things. We have to add the second round of the malt extract. Remember, we're adding it 2 separate times, which will make the beer lighter in color and bring out the flavor of the hops a little bit more, lighter color and body. But before we do that, we're going to add another ingredient. This is 100% optional. It's a thing called Irish moss, which is a clarifier. And what it does is it promotes the hot break, which is what I explained. When the malt breaks down, it makes it more fermentable. It does that, and it gets rid of some of the protein that can cloud your beer up later. It does not affect the flavor of the beer, make it better or worse. All it does is just help and make the beer more clear. And for a 5-gallon batch, you will add 1 teaspoon with about 15 minutes, left in the boil. And they also make these in tablet form if you want, that I usually use. But today I'm using, and it's just a little powder, and you sprinkle that on top. And then now I'll add the malt, the second round of the malt extract. Remember to stir it so that it does not burn on the bottom. And again, the malt adds to a sweeter flavor in the beer, adds more body, and fermentable sugars to make alcohol, which is important. What do you think, Ricky?
Looks good.
Yeah.
Can't wait to drink it.
Me either. Okay, now we'll let that go. I'll probably cover it just for a few minutes so that, to bring it back to a boil. And then we will, in about 10 minutes, we'll have the wort chiller, the second round of hops, and we'll get it cooled off, and then we'll be good to go. Okay, so now where the malt has been boiling for about 10 minutes, and it's already gotten back to a full boil. So what we have to do now is we're going to put this wort chiller, which is this, and basically what this is it's hooked up to the garden hose, and then it runs through the water, the cool water, through the coil, and then runs out through this end, and just will run out into the driveway. And how this works is after we turn the propane off, it'll cool the wort as fast as it can, which is good. You want to cool it as fast as it can, because the same way that it has a hot break where it breaks the proteins, it also has a cool break or cold break where it will, if you cool as fast as it can, it will help make the beer clearer, potentially better tasting. But it's not that important to have one of these. They're not expensive, but they're not completely necessary unless you're going to brew a lot. You can use an ice bath and put it in. Some people even put it in the fridge overnight, but that can be risky because bacteria can build if you don't add your yeast. But it's good to cool to yeast pitching temperatures as fast as you can. You want to try to get below 100 degrees. At 70 degrees would be perfect, would be even better. So first, while it's still boiling, we'll just drop it in. That way we can let it sterilize, let the boiling water do its thing. You always want to hook your hoses up before you drop it into the water because it'll be too hot really quick. And this might stop your boil, but with the propane going, it won't hurt it. And now we'll wait a couple more minutes, 3 more minutes, and then we'll add our last round of hops. I'm going to put the lid on that. And then we'll turn the water on and get it cooled off. And it should only take maybe 15-20 minutes to get completely cooled down to 100 degrees. If you use an ice bath, it might take an hour. Or if you're doing a full boil of 5 or 6 gallons, it could take as much as 2 hours. So it's always good to get it cooled down as quickly as possible. Okay, now we're going to add the last round of hops, and it's about 2 minutes left of the boil, and it's already started boiling again since we added the wort chiller. And we'll just drop it in there, and to make sure that the wort chiller isn't restricting the last little bit of hops, you just kind of pick the wort chiller up and slush it around, and it mixes the hops up inside of it. Get it going. So we got about 2 minutes, then we'll turn the wort chiller on. Mix up some sanitizer, get our primary fermentation bucket all ready to go, and then we'll be ready to go. Okay, now the beer is done boiling. I got the lid on to make sure that no bugs or anything else will get into it after it's done boiling. After you're done boiling and after it's cooled off, it's very important to keep a closed lid on it. Be very careful with it because bacteria can get into it. It can ruin your batch very, very easily. Ricky's going to go turn the water hose on for me, which is going to run through here, go around the coil and out, and cool the beer off. I've got a bucket here. I'm going to collect about a gallon of water to make a batch of sanitizer with it, to sanitize my fermentation bucket, just to reuse a little bit of it. Oh, man. Ricky, turn it off. Sometimes mishaps happen. There, that's good. That's good. We'll just let the excess just run out into the driveway, and it'll take about 15 or 20 minutes to cool down a batch of beer like this. If you do a full boil, like if you're doing all grain brewing, you'll have to do a full boil. It'll take a little bit longer. It'll take maybe 25 minutes to get it cooled down to where you want it. So we'll just kind of let it go. We'll be back in a little bit. Okay, at this point, the wort chiller has been going for about 15 minutes. It's a good time to do a temperature check. You want to make sure that the thermometer is sterile, it's been sanitized. I need to mix some sanitizer up real quick and then I'll take the temperature reading. This sanitizer is especially developed for breweries. You want to use 1 tablespoon per gallon of water. I just mixed this up right here, so when I dropped 1 tablespoon in, I'll just stir it up. And from this point on, everything that comes into contact with your beer or wort, as it is at this point, should be sanitized. So I'm going to put the thermometer needle in it. It needs to be rinsed in sanitizer before I do, because it's even a little bit of bacteria can cause it to get an infection and turn out not very good. So we'll see what we got. Okay, so right now we are 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty good. I might let it go 5 more minutes. It's below 100, so we could go ahead and put it in our fermenter, but I might wait just 5 minutes just to let it cool down a little bit more before we go ahead and do that. So what got me interested in brewing beer, I suppose I first got interested in it. I was looking up things on the internet about it, and I saw the Mr. Beer kits, things like that, and then eventually led me to the websites to sell kits like what I'm using today. I was 19 years old, couldn't purchase beer legally. I was looking for a way maybe around that a little bit, but luckily I didn't have enough money to buy those kind of kits, and it is illegal. I wouldn't suggest it. So I waited until I got a job when I was 25. My first paycheck I got from my first real full-time job that wasn't traveling internationally teaching. I bought my first kit and brewed my first batch of beer. And since then, I've come to appreciate different styles of beer, and brewing your own beer is an excellent way to do that. Made me go to the liquor store, the grocery store, and try the different styles. And it's great to make you realize that there's more types of beer out there than just the typical Bud Light, Budweiser, Miller Lite, things like that. And then, it's a lot of fun when you tell people you brewed this beer. Feel like you're creating something instead of just going and buying it at the store. It's like cooking your own food instead of going to McDonald's kind of thing. And it's so nice having good taste testers like Ricky and some of my other friends to come by and to sample some of the beer, and they ask questions. They're curious. But you have anything to add, Ricky?
No, I'm just ready to drink this one. It looks very delicious.
Yeah. But we can go ahead, it's cooled off right now. We can go ahead and take the wort chiller out. You want to go turn the hose off, Ricky? Yeah, set it on. Ricky's going to go turn the hose off. Take it out, put the lid back on. Okay, now we will take, like I explained to you earlier, this is the primary fermenter, and this is where the beer will undergo primary fermentation, which is where the yeast will eat most of the sugar from the malt and convert it to alcohol and CO2. During this process, get all this stuff out of there. During this process, when fermentation first starts, there will be a head of like foam called crossin that will form on top of the beer. And then after most of the fermentation is done, that crossin will fall. And then a couple days later, you can bottle, or you can put it in your secondary fermenter, which is the glass bottle I showed you earlier, and then you can bottle it later. It's very, very important to, at minimum, after the crossin falls, to wait 1 week before you bottle your beer. If you wait more than 1 week, or if you wait less than 1 week, like if you bottle it when it's still fermenting, you can have what's called bottle bombs, where your bottles will explode from the pressure that the beer builds up from the fermentation process. Because it gives off the CO2 and the pressure will build, and bottles will explode. I've never had that because I read about it and was careful. But just so you know, to be careful. That's why it's good when you're getting started to use plastic buckets, because if it pops the top off, no harm. You can just snap it back down. If you want to use a bottle like a 5.5 gallon bottle like I have here, you can use that, but you'll need to put a tube, what's called a blow-off hose, to put on that into another bottle with sanitizer. That way it just lets the pressure off, even if it fills up. They make bigger glass bottles, 6.5 gallons, that I typically would use, that you don't have to worry about that as much, but you still have to be careful and make sure that the crossin doesn't get too full. Okay, so now we have our bucket of sanitizer we mixed up here, and I'm just going to pour a little bit of the sanitizer into this bucket. And then take the lid from it, snap it down. You might get a little messy here from sanitizer coming out, but don't worry about it. Might hold your thumb over the hole on the top, just shake it up. Make sure that it gets all, in every little nook and cranny there. And take the lid off. Hand it to your brewing assistant. Pour the sanitizer back into the bucket. Okay. Now right here, this is an important part. Yeast require oxygen, the air inside of the wort to be successful, to be healthy. So you will want to pour the wort as violently as possible into your bucket. They have special things like this if you want to siphon it into a glass jug that you can hook that helps siphon it. They also make, they're kind of like fish aquarium stones that are stainless steel that you could put inside of it and let the air pump do it. Or an easier way, just pour it in from as high as you can without missing. It's hard to do if you have a big batch, like if you're boiling 5 gallons, so you might have to use a pitcher and pour it in a couple at a time before you pour it. But that will help to aerate your wort, which will be beneficial to the yeast later. But it's important to cool it below 100 degrees before you dump your wort. If it's over 100 degrees, then you will get what's called oxidation, which is bad. That means that little bits of oxygen will cling to your wort from it, and then it will add a cardboard, kind of a wet cardboard taste to your beer, which you don't want. So it's very important to cool it as low as you can before you do this. And you never want to handle hot beer violently. You want to make sure you're very easy with hot beer. But once it's cooled to this point, it's about 80 degrees right now, then it's a little bit, it's not quite as big of a deal. Okay, so I'll pick it up. This is probably it's about 2.5 gallons now, so it's not quite as big of it's not that much, so I don't have to use a pitcher. And this is our sanitized bucket that I've sanitized. And you just pour it in, let it splash around, won't hurt anything. Just pour all the hops in there with it, is what I do. I left a little bit of hops behind. It does not look very good right there, but it's still good. At this point, we only have, we have right about 3 gallons of beer. We need to take that up to 5 gallons, which be right here. So we'll have to use tap water, we'll just use from the hose and fill it up to the 5-gallon mark. And then we'll put the lid on, or we'll add the yeast, then we'll put the lid on, and then we'll be ready to go. Okay, that's good. Okay, that's good. So now we're just adding just regular water. Sometimes in the past I've used pre-boiled water and added it because I was worried about infection, but then I've done it like this several times later and haven't had no problem. So that's just how we're doing it today. And we'll just top it up to 5 gallons. That's how much beer we want. Okay, that's good, Rick. Okay. Now, the next step, we will sanitize our spoon. Make sure you get the whole thing covered with sanitizer. Then we'll stir it up to mix the wort that we just added with the water we just added. Okay, now we have to take a sample that we're going to use to measure the gravity, which I'll explain in a minute. This thing is really handy. I bought this in Columbia Cool Stuff. This is called a thief. I think they called it a wine thief, but I use it for beer as well. And what it does is it has a little thing at the bottom. You push it down, and then it fills up with your liquid. And then you can do a gravity, use your hydrometer to measure the gravity, which I'll explain in a minute. But you got to make sure this is sanitized as well. Remember, at this point, everything that comes into contact needs to be sanitized. To take a sample, you just drop it down, wait for it to fill up. Okay. And then you take, this is the hydrometer. It's just a little glass piece you might have used in science class in high school. This is a way to measure the sugar, essentially, the weight. Because when the yeast eat the sugar, the alcohol that it leaves behind actually weighs less than the sugar. So it's a way there's a formula you can figure the amount of sugar or the weight that you start with versus the weight you end with, the gravity you end with, and it tells you how much alcohol is left in it. So you don't have to do this, it's an optional step, but it will tell you your alcohol percentage when you're done. And so it's real easy, you just drop it in there, and they'll tell you where it floats. My gravity is about 1.548, which is exactly where I wanted. So that will give me a beer right up a little more than 5%. Kind of probably, depending on where it ferments down to, probably put me right about maybe 4.9%. But I won't know for sure 100% until after. Now the last step, we'll add the yeast. Typically, when I make a beer, I make what's called a yeast starter, where you take a little gallon jug or half a gallon jug, and then you'll take 2 pints of water, and you boil in a half a cup of the light dried extract, malt extract that I showed you earlier, a half a cup for 2 pints of water, and then you cool it, and then you do this the night before you brew, and then you add your yeast, and then it makes like a mini batch of beer. That way you know if the yeast is healthy, the yeast will get going, they'll be strong, and then when you add them to the beer, then they can start fermentation immediately. It usually will help make the beer taste a little better, a little crisper, better flavor, or can make it have a better flavor. It also helps so you don't have stuck fermentation, where sometimes the yeast will stop eating the malt for whatever reason and won't finish. But for the first time, I would recommend just sprinkling it on top. Dry yeast, you can also, it's recommended to rehydrate it, which means put it with a little bit of tap water and just let it sit for 10 minutes before you add it. If you don't do a starter, the yeast are healthier when they get fresh water. But for this time, on your first batch, you can just sprinkle it on top. Dry yeast usually starts very fast. You'll notice fermentation within 24 hours, whereas liquid yeast might take a couple days before you'll notice anything. You'll notice, well, for one, on a bucket you can't see, but the airlock that we're going to put on top will be bubbling very fast. If it's not bubbling, you might just have a leak around the top, which is no big deal. But on a glass jug, you can see it. There'll be the head across and will form and all of that. Okay, so now we'll add the yeast. And just sprinkle it on top. You do not need to stir the yeast, mix them in. Ales, which is what we're making, they ferment on the top, so don't have to worry about it. And after you get done with this, just take the top, snap it back on. Then you have an airlock like this, and you want to fill it about half full of sanitizer, and this lets air out but does not let air back in through it. You just stick it right on there, make sure everything's okay, and then you're good to go. You'll want to store it in a dark place, especially if you're having a glass panel. There's a reason why most beers come in brown bottles, because sunlight can have negative effects on the beer. It can affect the malt, which is why most beers are in brown bottles. It's a good idea to keep it in a dark place that's dark most of the time. My glass bottles, I wrap blankets around them so that sunlight doesn't get into them. You want to store, if you're brewing an ale, like this is, you want to store it right around 70 degrees, a place that stays 70 degrees where the temperature is continuous. A couple degrees here and there won't make a difference. Dry yeast usually has a bigger range. If it gets to 65, it'll be fine. But liquid yeast, you have to be a little more careful. It won't, if you get to 65 degrees, it might stop. So you might have to add dry yeast or something like that. But dry yeast is a little more tough. Wine yeast will eat through anything. If you brew a stronger beer, like an English barley wine, a lot of times they'll give you champagne yeast to go with it because the beer yeast isn't strong enough, and then so you have to add the dry yeast. So normally, while I'm brewing beer, there's usually a lot of kind of a dead time where you're waiting for the next step while it's boiling, things like that. So I like to get my guitar out, sit around. I'm not a professional, but I still enjoy playing. So it's my typical Saturday, sitting around, brewing beer, talking to Ricky, playing the guitar. It's a lot of fun. This is when I was traveling in Brazil, I learned to play this one song. It's called Tiro ao Álvaro. It's a Brazilian song. I can sing it, but not very well, so I'll spare you for that. That's it. I hope you all enjoyed the program. If you have any questions, you can email me at knowles, that's rknowles66 @hotmail.com. If you have any questions about anything, types of beer, beer styles, suggestions, the websites that you can buy it at, midwestsupplies.com, northernbrewer.com, cool stuff in Columbia, excellent places, and they'll answer any questions you have as well. But I would be happy to answer any questions. Again, I'm Ryan Knowles. This is Ricky Singh. Oh, sorry.
I'm Ricky Singh.
This is Ricky Singh. Thanks for watching.